Well, howdy, y'all. Today we're going to be writing equations from graphs. And earlier we've done drawing graphs from equations, but today it's the other way around. And before we get started, I would like to stress the fact that we can write any sinusoidal graph as either a sine function or a cosine function. The only difference is it's going to be shifted a little bit. So let me start off by remembering what our equations look like. Well, first off we have y is equal to a vertical shift plus our amplitude times either the sine or the cosine. I'm going to start off with the sine of the period of x plus or minus our horizontal shift. Now, so this is what our answers are going to look like at the end of this. So why don't we start off with then I guess from cosine it would be y is equal to the vertical plus the amplitude cosine period of x. I'm going to do minus the horizontal. Now this could be a plus or a minus, and same with this guy up here. Okay, so why don't we start off with this first one. Now, when doing these equations, we need to realize that we need to choose right off the bat whether or not we're going to do a sine or a cosine. I think I'm going to start with the cosine first, and often in problems we'll let you choose, but sometimes we'll say please write the graph as a sine function. Here we're going to do cosine. And when you're doing cosine, you're going to look at these peaks. So this guy right here and this guy right here. Or this guy over here. Okay, now that we have found our peaks, I'm going to find my midline. And luckily for us, our midline right here is already given to us at -5. So I'm going to go ahead and start writing it. We got y is equal to we translated the graph down 5, so we have to subtract 5 plus, now let's find our amplitude. And remember, our amplitude is the distance between our peak and our midline. So if I draw a line straight down there, that distance is from -5 to 2, or 7. So we have an amplitude of 7. Now I said I was going to do a cosine first, so we'll write cosine of our period. Now, remember guys, our period of a normal cosine or sine function is 2 pi. And how we would find the period if we were given p is we would divide by p, and this would give us our period. Now, if I want to find our period if I want to find p and we're given our period, I'm going to multiply both sides by p and divide by period, so we get p is equal to 2 pi over our period. Now this is going to let us find out what p is. So let's find out what our period is first. And I see over here that I have 4 degrees and 8 degrees. Now I've kind of marked that up. Let me erase that amplitude line real fast so we can actually see that. There we go. Now we can see that that amplitude, our period, is going from -4 to 8. Now that's going to be 12. So it's going to be 2 pi, let's where's my cursor, it's going to be 2 pi divided by 12, or that's going to be pi over 6. So you guys can go ahead and write pi over 6, but I'm going to stick with 2 pi over 12. And remember, you don't need to simplify, sometimes it's nice. Okay, x. Now our last part, let's do this horizontal shift. Now you can do, there's 2 horizontal shifts you could choose from. Actually, there's infinitely many. But for us, we're going to say that we can either have moved left 4 or right 8. So why don't we say we moved left 4? And when we move left, we add, so plus 4. And guys, that is the cosine function for this graph. And why don't we go ahead and just crank out a quick sine function for it as well. And we'll do that right below as soon as I find my cursor again. A tiny little dot. Okay, so we got y is equal to, well, the midline stays the same, so it's just going to be minus 5. The amplitude doesn't change, but except this time we're writing a sine function. And lucky for us, the distance between any two peaks is the same as the distance between any two of the same midpoints. And you see where, when I say midpoints, that's where it crosses the middle. But you say, oh, but Mr. Monaghan or Mr. M crosses the middle right here. Why can't I just take the distance from those two midpoints? Well, it's kind of, well, the reason is because at this midpoint the graph is going up, and we go up, 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 and then we hit the top, and we're going to go down the roller coaster, and at this point we're going down. And so these aren't the same points. They're not going to have the same derivative, which is a word that we're going to learn about later on in the semester, or later on in the year. And for those of you who are going to go on to calculus, you're going to spend your entire first couple weeks learning about derivatives. But anyways, then I go back up to here after I've gone down and going back up, and I see that this point is going up. So this guy and this guy are the same point. Now, I could have started my graph over here, but then this would have been a negative sine function. I want my midpoint to be going up. So I'm going to say that I was shifted over to this point. So but once again, we see that the fact that our period has stayed the same. So our period is, I'm going to write it simplified this time as pi over 6 x, and then we shifted over, was halfway between 2 and 8 is 6, or is, yeah, 6. No, it's not 6. It's going to be 5. It is shifted to the right 5. Okay, guys. So these are our two functions for our two sine and cosine functions for that graph. Now why don't we go ahead and just do one more, and I'll leave the rest to you as practice. And you're welcome to come in early tomorrow and show me what you've done. Okay. Why don't we do why don't we do number 3? You know what, I like number 5. Number 5 is, at least gives me my peaks and my troughs. So with number 5, why don't we start off with our sine function? So y is equal to, oh look, it hasn't given us what our midline is. So why don't we calculate our midline? And to do that, what you're going to do is we're going to average these two values. So it's going to be 56 plus negative 38 divided by 2. And when we do this in our calculators, we get 56 minus 38 is 18, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. So what that means is this little, where'd my pen go? Here we go. This little midline right here is at y equals 9. So we have shifted up 9 degrees, so it'll be y is equal to 9 plus, what's our amplitude? Well, our amplitude is going to be 56 minus 9. So 56 minus 9 is 47. So our amplitude is 47. And every time I move, I lose my cursor. Pardon me. So 56 minus 9 is 47. And I said I was going to start with the sine, so we'll start with the sine. And I think I may run out of room here in a minute, but we'll see. Okay. So now that we have that, we need to do our period. So why don't we find, I always like to do it from two peaks, just because they're easier to find. So we have this peak here, and this peak here. And from 3 to 20, that's 20 degrees. And if we remember from earlier that our P was just 2 pi divided by our period, which should be 20. We're going to see that our period is pi divided by 10. And if we remember earlier, it has to go outside of the parentheses. So let me go ahead and erase my mistake, and we'll go ahead and do that correctly. So that was going to be pi divided by 10, open parentheses, x. Okay, and then we need to do our horizontal shift. We'll end up doing sine. I need to go find where my graph is going up. So, or where it intersects the midline is going up. So here it's going down, and then right up here it's going up. I realized that that's 3/4 of the way in between, so I went and find our half. And our halfway in between 23 and 3. Now, to find halfway, we're going to do the same thing that we did earlier to find our midline, which is going to average those two values. So 23 plus 3 is 26 divided by 2 is 13. So halfway in between 3 and 23 is 13. And then we'll do it again to find that halfway in between 13 and halfway in between. I lost my pen again. Where am I? My tablet's turned off. I'm sorry, guys. Pardon my technical difficulties. And actually, it's gonna have. Oh wait, here we go. Okay, we're back on business. So halfway in between 23 and 13, 23 plus 13 is going to be 36 divided by 2. 36 divided by 2 is 18. Double check that on my calculator, like a poor mathematician. And yes, I was correct. Second guessing myself. Never second guess yourself. It's 18, so we have been shifted to the right 18. And how do we shift to the right? Well, shifting to the right means that we are going to subtract. So minus 18. Oh, okay. Computer's a little funny, but we'll live with that. Okay. And lastly, we're going to do our cosine function. And our cosine function is a lot like our sine function, but it's just shifted. So we have y is equal to the same vertical shift plus the same amplitude cosine of the same period. So cosine of pi divided by 10 of x. And this cosine function shift was given to us. We see that it was shifted to the right over 3. So all we have to do is subtract 3. So and there's our cosine function. So it's really easy to see the fact that if you're given the sine function, you should be able to write the cosine function. And guys, I will see you in class tomorrow. Have a great evening.